Why did the Jedi Order not put a firm end to slavery in the galaxy? Greetings, Acolytes, and welcome back to the Archives. In The Phantom Menace, we bore witness to Anakin's origins as a slave on the desert world of Tatooine. The barbaric injustice of slavery proves to still exist in the galaxy, despite the progressiveness of the Galactic Republic and the existence of the Jedi Order. When asking why the Senate and the Jedi do not do anything about this, the only answer we ever really are given is from Shmi Skywalker, who says that the Republic did not exist out here. This was something that Qui-Gon grimly corroborated, though he did everything he could within his ability to free both Anakin and Shmi from Watto. But this begs the larger question: why is the slave trade still a market at all in the galaxy where Force-sensitive peacekeepers stand watch? Have they truly become that political? Or is there a deeper reason behind this? Well, join us today, my friends, as we open a holocron and explore the problem facing the galaxy far, far away. Slavery in Star Wars is a practice that was mostly seen in places like Wild Space, the Unknown Regions, and especially Hutt Space in particular. Being in Hutt Space is the most relevant today, since that is where Shmi and Tatooine were located. To understand this, we have to understand a big misconception that the Hutt Empire is in any way a part of the Republic. Very few of the planets are actually a part of the Senate, as Hutt-controlled space is its own entity. It's true, the Hutts are extremely powerful and influential beings. It was a massive portion of the galaxy, in fact, spanning almost over a fourth of all known space. It had existed before the Republic was ever formed, and it existed after it crumbled. Hutt space, generally speaking, was the Wild West, a lawless place where justice only existed in the deals you made with bounties that you paid. The Republic's ability to keep order, or to enforce any kind of laws, was non-existent, as it would basically be akin to intruding on foreign affairs. However, the Hutt cartel and the Republic tolerated one another because it was mutually beneficial to do so, in an effort to keep the peace with the Hutt cartel, who could very easily raise their own army of scum and villainy against the Republic. The Republic turned a blind eye to their slave trade practices, and as a result, the Jedi were forced to do so as well. The important thing to remember when it comes to the Jedi is that while they could administer justice anywhere, they technically only had the authority to do so within the boundaries of the Republic. Historically speaking, the Jedi Order pledged itself to guarding the peace and safety of the Republic specifically, and they will help out in other places where they can. However, it is not their duty, as it is a Jedi's duty to always help the innocent, although this could run them into major political issues. However, they would not have the same rights or authority if they made any action on a planet that was not a part of the Galactic Republic. This would be considered vigilantism, and the Jedi would be beholden to the local laws of that given system. The Jedi in actuality have little to no jurisdiction in Hutt space, and the Senate would have to make a bold move in an attempt to end slavery in the Outer Rim, and the Jedi Order could act accordingly to the Republic's efforts. But without that green light from the Senate, they would be overstepping their boundaries as peacekeepers. This would cause major problems and a political upset, one that could potentially lead to an unnecessary war with the Hutts, which neither the Republic nor the cartel ever wanted. The Republic found it easier to just appease to their neighbors, and the Hutts believed war with the Republic was bad for business. Things would get easier for the Hutts when the Separatists came in, and they were able to profit off of both sides of the war. But largely speaking, the Hutts were loyal to the Republic for purely business interests. What stops the Jedi from rallying together against slavery, though, and whatever consequences could come their way? What stops the Jedi? The answer is that by staying in the Hutt's good graces was extremely convenient for them. With Hutt space dominating such a large portion of the galaxy, many important hyperlanes ran through it, and the Jedi often needed to use these hyperlanes when on missions, especially during the Clone Wars. Anakin even required Jabba's direct permission to use a Hutt space hyperlane to move a Republic fleet, doing so since the mission was to save Jabba's son. For Jedi, dealing with the Hutts was extremely tricky and was a difficult process, but being on their bad side would hinder them greatly. They were petty and vindictive, holding grudges for a very long time until they felt as though their enemies had sufficiently suffered. The problem is, the Hutts do not care much for the Jedi because of their reputation as administering justice, which of course runs aground to the Hutts' business practices. If the Jedi Order were to remove one of the Hutts' most lucrative trades, they would do everything they could to hinder the Jedi or outright murder them. Encroaching on the slave trade would mean that the Jedi could likely be banned from ever entering Hutt space, which would keep them from being able to do any part of their job in the Outer Rim territories. This situation is far more complicated than what most see at first glance, and appeasing the Hutts and allowing slavery to persist was unfortunately the lesser of two evils. But that didn't mean that the Jedi were always okay with this. There were many talks within the Jedi Council concerning slavery, but no official consensus was ever taken. This made Jedi grow frustrated with the state of the Republic being so cowardly to do anything about this vile practice. Dooku in particular found it disgusting that the Jedi didn't do anything to stop slavery, and this was a major part of why Dooku saw the High Council and Yoda as hypocrites. In fact, when Anakin was brought back and evaluated by the Council, it was Dooku who believed that if they showed any sense, they wouldn't train Anakin for being as old as he was. However, he knew that if Anakin was not trained, then the boy would be sent back to Tatooine to rejoin his mother, possibly putting him back into slavery. And when speaking to Palpatine about this, Palpatine even mentioned that he understood Dooku's disillusionment with the Jedi, and their hypocrisy of taking this slave boy. Qui-Gon in particular had a soft spot for any slaves that he came across, and Qui-Gon would do anything he could to liberate them, even if he understood the complexity of the situation. Before Qui-Gon's death, he had arranged an expensive ship part to be delivered to Shmi Skywalker, one that would be enough for her to buy her own freedom. This ended up being unnecessary though, since Klieg Lars bought and married Shmi before the part ever would arrive to Tatooine. But at one point, Qui-Gon would come across slavery happening within the Republic, only this was being done by the Circa Corporation, who would be exploiting a legal loophole. Their slaves were technically employees, but through slippery legal practice, the Circa Corporation basically owned them as property and treated them as slaves operating in the Republic. Qui-Gon eventually befriended a former slave of this corporation, and with her help liberated a great many of them. Since he did this clandestinely, Qui-Gon could not be incriminated by the corporation for freeing the slaves, and the Jedi Master got away with it. This was commonplace for many Jedi. While the Order itself was unable to do anything legal to put a stop to slavery, Jedi still did what they could to liberate slave camps if an opportunity presented itself. We see this happen several times in the Clone Wars, especially when Anakin comes across the Zygerian slavers. A lot of the time, the Jedi were able to get away with liberating slaves by hitting the traitors with kidnapping charges, since many poachers illegally captured beings from other planets that they would sell as slaves. So while the Jedi were in between a rock and a hard place legally, they still had hands-on ability to help out whenever they saw fit. Although en masse, the Jedi could do nothing to stop slavery. And that, my friends, is why the Jedi didn't. But tell us, was this ever an aspect of the lore that ever bothered you? And after watching, does this answer give solid reasoning? Or do you think the Jedi should have made a push to end slavery once and for all? As always, my friends, thank you so much for stopping by the archives today for another holocron opening, and may the Force be with you.